Well, my name's Josephine Baines. I currently work for a sales and promotion agency, but I think I'm being interviewed today because of my previous experience working with Michelin Butlers and Stonegate, so they're a food outlet or company. Yeah, I started that when I was doing my A-levels, pulling pints behind the bar, and then progressed up through the ranks. So again, with the employees courses, I don't think there's any actual legal requirement that you have to have that to work in the pub trade with food, but the company that I worked for had lots of in-house courses. They were in-house, recognised in-house, but they were outsourced. So you'd go on a day trip to Leeds and sit there, spend the morning learning all the bits and pieces you had to, and then you take the test in the afternoon. And I think they did level 1, 2, 3 and 4, and that depended on your job role. So when I'm saying it out loud, it sounds quite odd now, but to work in the kitchen you had 1, 2, and then you could progress to 3 to be a kitchen manager. But to be a manager, when you didn't actually have that much to do with the contact of food, you had to have a level 4. I think, well, I'm going to refer to the CMI audits because they're the place that I had most knowledge with. They would deal with the various different criteria. So I think they'd check your due diligence. We had a due diligence book, so you had to record regularly the temperatures of food, how long food had been left out for. It was mainly about recording it and making sure that you're on top of the paperwork as much as the actual serving of food. But yeah, I think leaving food out for too long, letting bacteria grow, temperatures being too high, not having cleanliness basically. So from the councillors, as I said before, I think they're only required to check them every 3 years, but if they go in, check them, give them a poor mark, then they'll come back more frequently to make sure that they get a higher grade or make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Every 6 months we would get, with the company that I work for, would get 6 monthly checks. One would be announced, so you'd be prepared for them coming. Another one wouldn't be announced, so you'd be busy working and then someone comes in and goes, right, I'm just checking. And they check that staff had the right uniform on, so like all the hair was out the faces. They check that you had enough kind of, we call it D10, but steriliser, so you could wash your hands, and they'd watch the staff and make sure the kitchen staff were washing their hands before touching food and between using the right different cutting blocks for meat over vegetables and that sort of thing. So they give you different grades. They'd give you red, amber and green. Red was, or I think black was serious. I think if you got a black, they would then contact the council and you could potentially be shut down, but CMI don't have the power to shut you down. So they would give you red, amber, green. If I can recall correctly, anything over 80% was a green. I think amber was between 80 and 50 maybe, and red below 50. I think so. But they covered all sorts of hygiene regulations, not just the stuff in the kitchen. They'd make sure that, like I say, like tiles weren't cracked and things like that, because pest control, and make sure that you're on top of all that sort of thing. It would be in the company that I work for, Michelin Butlers, it would be they would ask CMI to come and check on their staff. So essentially I was an employee of Michelin Butlers and they'd come to make sure that my place was run properly. Yeah, and the manager's bonus is dependent on the CMI results. The CMI's checklist is based on the council's checklist, and it's a bit more, it's tailored to the particular outlet rather than just generic as the council is. CMI don't have the power to close it down, the council do. And I think council just don't come as regular. I suspect it's because of funding. They just don't come as often, whereas with CMI, it's paid for privately just to make sure that everything's kept on top of. I don't know that it means staff are trained as in have official qualifications, but I suspect it means that they're trained as in know what they're doing. The people that hand in the food would be trained in the company that I work for, but it'd be the management. So you could employ someone who had absolutely no food qualifications whatsoever, and then we would send them on courses, but on the job training, so they didn't have to have that qualification before touching food and serving customers. I think the manager just has to have the knowledge so that they can then check their staff are doing their jobs correctly. So my job as a manager would be to go in and make sure, we had a book called due diligence, and in that it would be checks to make sure that you've got the right steriliser, that you've got the ovens at the right temperature, that you've cleaned the deep fat fryers on a weekly basis, that you've cleaned the lines. So it was a pub trains, that you clean the lines every 11 days, and you had to write that down on site to say that you've done that. You'd have to wash your hands in between and change uniform, but I think that's quite rare. I think you'd either be in the kitchen or you'd be on the shop floor. Because if you go into like Subway, they'll put a glove on, but they'll use the same glove to serve you food, then they use the same glove to give you a change. Yeah, you're right, that's not right.